This is the DMT-100 by Donner. This is also the DMT-100 by Donner. And since my channel failed to meet the cooperation conditions set by Donner, I bought these myself, and it's been an interesting ride. So let's talk about it. At the time of this video, the DMT-100 sells for around $200, but you can regularly find them on sale or with coupons that can bring the guitar down to as low as $144, depending on the finish you're after. And if you find yourself interested in one of these, you'll be able to find the links for it in the description down below. Now we've got a lot to cover, and my analytics would suggest that I talk too much as is, so I'm going to flash the specs here, and you can pause the video if you really want them. When I received these guitars, they were pretty well packed. You do get a gig bag with it, and it's better than nothing, but it is definitely a cheap one. You get a couple of accessories, of which the quality of the cable and strap were both way better than what I expected, and better than anything that I'd received with other guitars that were even 3 times the price. The fret wrap is decent, and honestly, I just threw the extra strings out, because the ones that were on the guitar already were kind of crap. The finish on the guitar, though, really surpassed my expectation. It's matte, which of course means that you will end up with shiny spots eventually, but given the cost of the guitar, I was pretty impressed. After a few weeks though, I did notice finish cracking along the neck pocket of one of them. As disappointing as this was, I've seen much higher quality guitars from well-known brands do the same thing, so The hardware all feels decent, and I find the guitar to be really well balanced, with no noticeable neck dive and pretty comfortable in the hands. If I could change one thing about how it feels, it would be a thinner neck. My main guitar is an Ernie Ball Music Man JP6, and for most of my playing life, I've preferred really thin, fast-feeling necks. This isn't a baseball bat by any means, but it's definitely thicker than I would prefer. The setup right out of the box was not bad. There were no sharp edges or poorly pressed frets, though the frets were definitely in need of a good polishing, as there was noticeable scratchiness when using vibrato. Additionally, if you like super low action the way that I do, a full fret dressing probably wouldn't be a bad idea. I was able to get the action low enough to be enjoyable without having to go that far though. The intonation was a little hit and miss, but with the hipshot style bridge, it's a breeze to adjust. And for $200, I think all of this is pretty par for the course. Now I've seen other reviewers share very similar sentiments about the setup and then stop there, proclaiming that this guitar isn't adequate for beginners despite being marketed as such because it's not perfectly set up from the factory. To which I have to ask, how many $200 guitars have you played that were? Because I've bought brand new $600 guitars that were on par with these as far as the setups go. Sure, in an ideal world, you'd love to think that $200 will get you a decent guitar that is perfectly set up with beginners in mind, but I just don't think that's realistic. So if you're worried about the setup, take some of the money that you'll have saved by buying this guitar and bring it to a music store to be done. When it comes to build quality, for the price, I'm satisfied, but there's definitely room for improvement. For the first couple of weeks, the guitar seemed to have some issues with tuning stability, but in time it's almost as though it kind of settled into itself. I really can't explain it any better than that, but I do have an Ibanez RG-RT421 that occupies the same guitar stand, and the stability of them both seem very similar now, in that if I leave them alone for a few weeks, they're both a little flat, but once you tune them up, they do fine. And to that end, while I can tell that the tuners are a little on the cheap side, they seem okay to me. If new ones fell in my lap, sure, I'd replace them, but they're not causing me any issues of note. The pickups are a little microphonic, but for the most part, I think they sound good. I don't find myself feeling the need to replace them either. The same can be said for the electronics. The volume pot, tone pot, and pickup selector switch all do what they should, the way that you'd want them to, though I do find the knobs a little too close to the pickup selector for my playing style. And when trying to switch pickup positions quickly, I do unfortunately smack the volume knob regularly. Eventually, my intention is to remove the tone knob and put the volume knob in its place to free up that area, but the volume and tone knobs are connected to a board, which was bittersweet. It was cool because that's not the kind of thing that you would normally expect to find in a budget guitar, but was also a bit of a bummer because it does mean that I'll have to buy a new volume pot to relocate the knobs as intended, but that's a me issue. One weird thing about these guitars is that while restringing them, the ferrules fell out. Typically these are pressed in pretty well and are difficult to get out even with effort. In this case though, while they don't seem to rattle, they're loose enough to fall right out on their own once you've removed the strings. When restringing mine for the first time, as soon as I flipped the guitar over onto its back, all 6 of them fell out and hit the floor. This is easily solved with a little dab of glue, but it is something I feel like they should address. Despite its flaws, for the most part, I really like these guitars, and I feel like the things really holding them back are improvements that could be made to the routing and consistency in the form of quality control. With the routing, there is a little space in the neck pocket that I don't feel like should be there. I don't think it's hurting anything, but since these things are all done with CNC machines now, it's something that could be addressed and would become a non-issue moving forward. This goes for the ferrule routing as well. These 2 guitars are fairly consistent, but I did have a third that was not. It had tuning stability issues that couldn't be fixed, the finish was yellowed, the neck was off angle, though not horrendously so, and the bridge pickup was so off that the poles didn't line up with the strings. Needless to say, I sent that one back and exchanged it for another, which is how I ended up with 2 consistent ones. Now these are budget guitars, so these things happen. They can be addressed, and hopefully in time they will be, because the company would be better off by doing so. In the meantime, just make sure that if you buy one, you inspect it in a timely manner so that you can exchange it if need be, and be sure to purchase it from a reputable dealer like Amazon. Here's why I mention that. I emailed Donner in November and December of 2023 to ask about these inconsistencies, especially given the CNC technology that most guitar manufacturers utilize today, and had also wanted to inquire as to their build process for the sake of this video. And I was ignored. I then emailed them once more in January and was ignored again, eventually prompting me to reach out to their Facebook page where I was told to, yes, email them. I explained that I had and that I'd yet to receive a response. And at that point, it became apparent to me that whoever was running the Facebook page seemed to have very little interest in talking to me. And when I brought up with the issues with the guitar, I was told to just exchange it through the dealer. I asked about the build process and even mentioned that I wanted this information for my video and was ultimately, what? You guessed it, ignored. Mind you, I reached out not to complain, but to understand the process and to hopefully educate you guys. My hope was to give the company the benefit of the doubt in this video, but instead I ended up leaving the situation feeling pretty disheartened. While I did end up with 2 guitars that I'm very happy with, the lack of concern shown by the company has left a bad taste in my mouth and leads me to believe that any issues you may encounter with their products will have to be handled by you and the dealer you bought them through, not the company. That said, maybe it's just growing pains and something that will get better as time goes on, and I really hope that that's the case. Company experience aside, I feel like these guitars offer a lot of bang for the buck, even for more advanced players. I've been playing for about half of my life now, and when I found these, I was in search of an extra guitar that I could use for gigs without having to shell out a lot of money. These days, there are similarly priced options from brands that we already know and love that may be as good or even better than the DMT-100, but I was hell-bent on having 24 frets, 25.5-inch scale length, and a string-through guitar. And most of the well-known brand guitars in this price range that I've seen don't tick all 3 of those boxes. Look, I received these guitars expecting the worst and ended up being pleasantly surprised. As such, I do think that these are a genuinely wonderful option for beginning players despite the aforementioned inconsistencies and flaws. And if you're an advanced player who's willing to put in a little bit of effort and maybe some better parts, I think these can be great budget options for you too. When you purchase a guitar that is within this price range, I think your expectations should be realistic, especially from a company that doesn't have the kind of reputation as the big names. No, this isn't going to be the kind of quality that an Ibanez Prestige or Paul Reed Smith SE is, but it's got a lot of potential for $200. I also think it would be a great base for customizations or modifications. I'd love to strip one of these down and see what I could do with it myself. And just in case you're wondering, yes, I do use them for gigs. And yes, I am very happy. So that's it. If you have any questions about the DMT-100, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. As always, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you found it to be both helpful and informative, and if you did, please consider doing the things that most people on YouTube ask you to do at the end of their videos. I'd really appreciate it. Did you do it?